Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost, and it's Friday, so it's the TRU Community Gathering. For those of you who happen to just be finding us on YouTube or on our podcast station, welcome. I'm glad you found us. I'm very happy. I want you to know what we do a little bit, in case you don't. We are an arts service organization in New York. I founded it 32, 33 years ago. We've always been a small little arts organization in New York that serviced a modest community. And then COVID happened. COVID happened, and we suddenly went virtual. And all of a sudden, I had people coming in from all over the world and all over the United States, Canada, wherever. I think today we don't have any international representation, but we have people from all over the country. So this was all about a community service at first, because people were feeling isolated, didn't know what to do with themselves during COVID. So somebody said, open up a Zoom room. And I said, what's a Zoom room? And they sort of took my hand and showed me what it was all about. And it was a long courtship before I finally asked Zoom out. I basically discovered that I could have a room like this and I could bring people in. And on Fridays at 5, it used to be at 4:30, but now it's at 5 o'clock. We bring people in from all over and we talk about what we're going through and what we're doing. No longer talk about shutdown because we don't have shutdown anymore. Got lots of other things to talk about and lots of other things that may aggravate and concern us, but shutdown is no longer one of them. So we've been doing this for quite a while, and I think this is my 266th or 267th consecutive conversation that we're having since April 17th, 2020. And it's become something that I love to do, and I do it to bring in all sorts of interesting people and talk about all sorts of aspects of theater and the arts in general that I hope are of interest to the community. I have a community that joins me every week, and now I have whoever you are out there in YouTube land and podcast land. So today we're going to be talking to somebody who I don't know how to define. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. How to define this man. This man is at heart, I think he's a director, but he does so many other things. And he's located in Minnesota, but I have to say that he's also made a big impact here in New York. He's been part of the New York scene often and for many, many years. Now he's in St. Paul at the Park Square Theater. His name is Stephen DiMenna, and I'm actually going to bring Stephen in, and I'm going to start asking him a little bit more about himself so he can tell me the things that I can't figure out. So here he comes. Hey, Stephen.
Hello,
So,
everybody.
I'm right about the fact that you're in Minnesota.
I'm in Minnesota. I moved back here in 2019 after 25 years in New York City. So
So
I moved,
I'll tell the truth on both accounts.
yeah.
And tell us where you. I think you started as a director. That seems to be the.
Well, I'm from Chicago, and when I was 18, I was browsing in my community library in Chicago, and I pulled out this book called A New Theater by Tyrone Guthrie, and I read it. And it was all about the founding of the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. And I thought, okay, well, that's why I want to go to school. I want to go to school in the city that has this theater. And I'd never heard of anything like regional theater. I was from Chicago, and we got the Broadway tours and maybe a show at the Goodman. And this was before the great off-loop theater scene in Chicago, before Steppenwolf Theater and all of those wonderful off-loop theaters. So I came to the University of Minnesota, enrolled in the BFA program because they had a connection with the Guthrie Theater. And I went in as an actor and came out as a director, and I didn't know that was going to happen.
Ah, so the first dream was acting, and then directing turned out to be your direction.
Right, and then I totally dropped the acting dream. So that went by the wayside.
I'm going to come on with you right now. So here I am. Here you are. So you you have done so much beyond directing. But at the heart of everything you do, would you say the directing is an influence on all your choices you made? Why have you made the choices you made? Because
Yeah. So the first thing I did when I was in college, I started a youth theater company with the Minneapolis Park Board because I needed a job. And so I was teaching,
that.
yeah, I was teaching acting classes for kids at a park, and we did started to do productions, and then other parks said, "Hey, can you bring your production to us?" And over 10 years, it blossomed into a professional youth theater company that would create original works, musicals and non-musicals, that spoke to teenagers with teenagers in it. We had a bus. I drove the bus around. We toured the, the schools and parks all over
Well,
Canada and
let me
Antarctica.
ask you. I may have missed it, but I know that you were with the Manhattan uh, MCC's youth theater companies.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about now, or
No, so this was something in Minnesota I
oh,
did,
in Minnesota?
yeah,
Okay.
in my early 20s. And so I loved that made me love teaching, right? And so I always thought, I loved teaching and I loved directing. And both of those things have remained parallel careers for me over my entire life. And they feed each other. I think I'm a better director because I teach, and I'm a better teacher because I direct. So that led to just always, whenever there was an opportunity. And so MCC Theater Youth Company is a great example. Bobby Lupone gave me my first job in New York City when I moved there in 1994. I met him because a friend of mine had a play happening at the old MCC. I don't know if any of you remember it, on 28th Street, a little 99-seat theater above a flower shop, right, between 6th and 7th. And my friend said, and I had just moved to New York. He said, I've got this play. It's my off-Broadway debut. It's at this theater. I go, and there I meet Bobby Lupone, who was one of my heroes because Chorus Line was the first Broadway show I ever saw when I was 17.
Nice.
And I thought, oh, I want to be an actor like Bobby Lupone. It was, when I was on my way to the University of Minnesota. So Bobby says, who are you? I said, I just moved here from Minneapolis, and hoping to be a director in New York. He said, have coffee with me next week. Now that doesn't happen much anymore, right? And so I do. And Bobby said, hey, well, listen, we don't have any money, but why don't you come and you can do some readings and, do some staged readings for us and read plays. And I did all this kind of for free for about 2 years. And then I started workshopping plays they were considering. So we would do like a, 3-week rehearsal, script in hand, staged reading of all these plays they were considering for the main stage. And then had an opportunity to do 2 main stages there. And then Bobby said to me one day, do you want to we should start a club for high school kids, a theater club where they can come to the theater once a week. Do you want to do that? And I said, no, but if we call it a theater company that's within the company for teenagers, and they get to do a show that they write and create at the end of the year on the main stage. And he said, okay. So we started the MCC Theater Youth Company. I did that for 14 years. It's still going on. It's in its 24th year right now. And so that,
I didn't realize that. Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, they've kept it going. It's been a kind of badge of honor for them. And it was at the time the only off-Broadway theater that had a youth theater company, and the only youth theater company in New York that was part of an off-Broadway theater.
So now we have a lot more going on for youth theater. But the
Yes.
one that jumps out of my mind is Tada, and
Yes.
also does it predate TheaterWorks?
No, TheaterWorks I think is older, but those were so Tada and TheaterWorks are youth theaters only. This
But
was a
they
youth theater within an adult off-Broadway
okay.
company, right? And that was the distinction. And because it was run by Bernie Telsey and Bobby Lupone, every time Bernie cast a show, right, the youth company got free tickets. So we were at, dress rehearsals or previews of everything, Spring Awakening, Hamilton, any new play. Plus, they saw all the MCC plays. So it was great because this adult theater company that really rose over the last 25 years, now with its own, two-theater facility in Midtown. Um, we would do a show. I remember we did the Mercy Seat with Sigourney Weaver and Liev Schreiber, and Sigourney Weaver comes and talks to the youth company kids after the show. Like, so it was this great opportunity. Um, so that to go back to your original point, Bob, I've always had this soft spot in my heart for helping kids and introducing them to theater and sharing the passion I have for theater with kids. And then I taught at NYU for 15 years. So I'm teaching, college students while also directing. And I just continue to do that.
And we haven't even touched on South Africa yet.
Right.
So
That's a whole nother direction. Right?
let's stay here for a second though. What what is it that you think you bring to theater as a director by having been a teacher, by being a teacher?
Yeah. I think because when I'm forced to break down the process of whatever I'm teaching, whether it's directing or playwriting or musical theater, as a teacher, it it allows me to kind of structurally guide an actor, right, to be their best, right? Because I'm trying to explain what acting is to teenagers when I'm teaching. And it helps me because I have to articulate it so well, I become more articulate when I'm talking to actors. And I always like some of my favorite directors are like Dan Sullivan, right? Who, his work is almost invisible, except it's not, right? He's not a special effects gimmicky director. He's there to get the best work out of his actors and make sure that he's telling the playwright's story in the way the playwright wants it. And and I think that's all about how you communicate with actors, and communicating with students has helped me communicate with actors better.
Okay. My impression over the years has been that one needs to, when you're directing anything, you have to really be able to understand and read each of the actors that you're talking to,
Mhm.
because they don't all speak the same language. So
Right.
you actually have to adjust your language for each person. And do you how do you get to know your actors?
Yeah.
How do you get to know them well enough so that you know how to talk to that particular actor?
Right. And oftentimes they're meeting for the first time at the first read through. So they may not know each other.
Right.
Right. So, yeah. So the first responsibility, I think, for any director is to create a room that's going to be a safe space and a brave space. Right. They feel safe enough in the room that they'll feel brave, trying to do their best work. Um, I think, one of the things I like about having moved back here and taken over Park Square Theater is I get to work with a lot of the same actors over and over. And that really helps. And people are always like, oh, you cast the same people all the time. And I'm like, yeah, there's a reason for that, right? Because we know each other, we can take shortcuts. But yes, you have to, one actor may be slow to process a direction and take a couple of days to be able to internalize it and then let it manifest itself when they're on their feet. Another, you can give a direction and right away, like in the next time they run the scene, they're doing it immediately. So part of it is patience, right? And saying, okay, this actor's moving a little faster than this other actor, but they'll catch up. And as long as they're moving forward each day, we're good. But don't pressure them to work at the same pace as another actor who
I don't think
sometimes has more
I,
experience.
I don't think all directors actually do adapt to the actors. I think there are some directors who expect everybody to adapt to their methods.
I agree.
And both happen in the theater, and both can create successes.
Hmm.
I just think it's more. I'm into compassion and kindness,
Yeah.
so I do think that trying, at least making an effort to understand the needs of specific actors in your cast it's just compassionate. It's just
Yeah.
a nice thing to do. And it also will lead to it should lead to very good results.
Hmm.
Um, I have another question for you on a different topic.
Yeah.
A similar topic. How do you choose the pieces that you direct? And I'm sure that there have been times where you've been assigned them.
Yes.
So has there ever been anything you've been assigned that didn't feel right to you, and what did you do?
Mm. So, yeah. So this is the question every director, all my colleagues face is sometimes you're asked by a theater to do a play you don't want to do, but you do it because you want to maybe work at that theater, right? Or you want to work with the people involved, the design team or the playwright or the actors. sometimes you just need the money and the job, right? And especially in your early days as a director, right? It's like, well, I need to do 5 shows a year at a certain amount of a fee in order to, make a living. Then you get to the point where you're like, I want to start pitching shows and if you have relationships. So for example, let's say a theater, I'm not, I like to do new plays. I like to do sort of, you know, gritty urban realism and musicals and things. I'm not a Shakespeare guy.
I
I'm
just
not
have
a
to say,
classics.
gritty urban, gritty urban and musicals don't
I know
usually
they don't
come.
go along,
They don't like
but
usually follow.
no, but like I'm not a Shakespeare guy. But once if a theater said to me, "We'd like you to direct a Midsummer Night's Dream," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's not my favorite thing to do Shakespeare. I love to see it, but I don't love to explore it as a director." But let's say I'm like, I want to work at this theater again and again, so I do the job to establish a relationship. So that maybe the next time I go there, I can bring them a script and say, hey, this is a show I'd really love to do. And if you want to have me back, let's talk about this. So that's sometimes how I pick. Now that I run my own theater, I'm picking the things for 2 reasons. One, what does my community need to see? What stories need to be told? What aligns with the mission of the theater as defined by the board of directors and our mission statement? And so within that, then what do I want to direct? And what do I want? I'm picking plays for actors in the community. I'm picking up this particular play for this particular actor or this particular director to do.
Well, you said that if they want you to direct Midsummer Night's Dream, you're not a Shakespeare guy. What if they ask you to do King John?
You see, that would be a tough one. First of all, I'd have to read it over and over and over and say, first of all, can I do this play? Like, do I have the ability to understand and stage a play like that? Um,
Well, it's not likely to happen. Just
oh, probably not. No, probably not. And I have done some plays where I'm like, I can't wait for this experience to be over for a variety of reasons. The play just doesn't excite me, but I want to do my best, and so I bring my best to the room. Or, I'm working with there's someone in the cast who's sabotaging the production. There's always someone, right, that's going to cause some trouble somewhere. Jeffrey Hatcher, a terrific playwright who we're very fortunate to have live here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. I've commissioned him to write. He writes, as you know, a lot of mysteries and adaptations. His adaptation of Dial M for Murder had 37 productions around the country last year. So he's doing a cycle of 5 mysteries for us each year because Park Square has a tradition of doing mysteries. I have to do a mystery. And Jeff said once, there's always one asshole in every cast. And if you don't know who it is, it's probably you.
Oh, ouch.
I know, right? And that's not always the case, but he's being funny and as Jeff tends to be. But there are sometimes I'm like, I can't wait to get over this production because this group of actors is driving me crazy.
Well, have you ever had that situation and then but still been proud of the result, or do you think it takes its toll on the production itself?
Sometimes it does, but yes, I've had the experience where I was having a difficult time, not a good time there, but the show turned out to be great, and I was proud of it. But I also say, how much better could it have been if, I had actors who were cooperating more? This is particularly the case with college student actors, that because they're young, they're emotional. Some of them think they know everything, right, all the time. Others are like right there with you, and they want to learn from you, and they respect your wisdom as someone who's older, and they want to please and do their best. And that mix sometimes causes the cast to have conflicts within it, and their peers. But still, a good product can happen. But I always say, could it have been better if everybody got along?
Well, let's go to the material itself for a second. What are some of your favorite what are the things that you're most proud of directing, and do they have anything in common? And what is it that you like as a director?
Yeah, I tend to like stories about underdogs, right? And the little guy or the little girl. Um, I like plays that give actors a lot to chew on. and some great text, like Between Riverside and Crazy is a perfect example, right? It showcased these actors, and I put some of my best friends and best actors in the Twin Cities in the show, and it was just fun. And one day in rehearsal, I was saying to them, "You guys, this is too easy. You're just too good. You're doing so well." Um, and I did Jesus Hop the A Train, another Stephen Girgis play in 2003. So he's a writer I really like and admire. He writes very New York plays. He knows the language of people who live in New York City. Um, I think what they all have in common, the ones that are my favorites, are they're a little edgy and they challenge an audience to think. The writing is excellent. And if the acting is excellent and the design and the direction are excellent, it's a perfect storm for success. So I like that a lot. Um, and I like it when I can sit back and be proud of my actors.
What writer have you done the most plays of? By
Oh,
who? Where?
uh,
I lost the grammar there
yeah,
somewhere.
I'm trying to think. Well, so two for Stephen Girgis.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Have you directed any Albee?
no, and I would love to do some Albee. Um, uh, no, I'd have to like look at my resume now and say like, who have I done a lot of?
Just-
No, I think it's really like, most playwrights I've done once or twice. No, I don't think there's someone I've done 5 or 6 times.
okay, and less classic and more contemporary that you
Yeah,
in
most
general.
definitely.
But
Unless,
although you've been thrust into classics
yeah,
from time to time.
unless it's a Moliere, which I love,
Ah,
or a David Ives adaptation of a Moliere, which I really, really love, like School for Lies, which I did a couple years ago.
David Ives is a well, that's a style, that's a world in its own.
It is, yeah.
Um, I guess I want to move to the other things that you do. How did the International Theater Project come about?
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know, I run a small nonprofit organization called the International Theater Project, and we use theater to help young people, mostly teenagers, build self-confidence to work their way out of poverty in developing countries. So we began in Tanzania for 8 years, and what we do is we take teaching artists from New York, because we were, excuse me, I was based in New York till I moved here. And we go and we do a residency during their school holiday in the summer for a month at a school or a community center or an orphanage, wherever we can find a partner. And we will do multi-year residencies. So it started, my good friend and colleague, Mariana Houston, who was the director of education at TDF for like 30 years. And I was working in my early days in New York as a teaching artist for TDF, going out to the schools and doing playwriting residencies and then bringing kids to Broadway shows. She went to Tanzania on a volunteer vacation, teaching English for a month. She came back and she showed me her photos. And I said, "You are just glowing in all these photos. This is so great." She said, "Oh, it was a great experience. I was teaching theater to these kids in a small village in Tanzania." And I said, "Did you do any drama with them?" And because they speak Swahili and you speak English, how did you communicate? She said, "Yes, I did. We would take their books and I would show them how to act it out." And I said, "Hey, can we go back? Why don't we go back to that school next year, you and I, and do like a 3 week residency with the kids and have them write their own play in English? Because they speak English rudimentally there, but they don't master the language. Um, and see if drama has any meaning for these kids who have no TV, no cell phones, no movies, no connection with the electronic world." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I don't know, email the headmaster of the school." She said, "They don't have any email. They don't have any electricity at the school." But she had a friend who lived in Arusha who did have email, who was an American. And we would email her, and she would drive to the school and talk to the headmaster and say, that woman who came here last year wants to come back with another guy and do a thing and make a play. Anyway, we put together a little bit of money. We did it for 12 days. We worked with 20 kids who were 16 at a little school. They wrote a 13-minute play, all in English. We thought it was a one-off. We, we come home, and the headmaster emails us about 6 months later and says, you know, those 20 kids who were in that theater workshop at the end of the year, when they take their end of the year exam, those 20 kids scored the highest scores of any other kids in the school in their exam. And the only thing different about their school year was they had a 2-week theater workshop. And we said, well,
Wow.
was their English better? No, but what it was their self-confidence that they wrote something in English and spoke it in English and stood in front of their community and performed it. So long story short, we went back for 8 years to that school every year, and we would bring great teaching artists. Do you all know Nalaja Sun? She had that wonderful play several years ago called No Child that ran off Broadway for about 2 years. We would bring her. We brought Will Power. We'd bring J.D. Steele. It was fantastic. So we did that for 8 years there. Then we did Ethiopia for 2 years and an orphanage in Rwanda for 11 years. And now we've
But
been in South Africa.
how did you find your way to the different? How did you make the choices?
It was crazy. Sometimes we'd meet, I'd go to a benefit somewhere and sit at a table, and someone would say, oh, I've got this orphanage that I, fund in Rwanda. You should come and do a workshop there. And so, we'd correspond and set it up and do it. And we fund everything ourselves, so it's free to whoever our partner is.
So
And
let's start for the structure here. So
yeah,
the International Theater Project, you and she co-founded this.
we co-founded it. We ran it for many years. She retired in 2013, and then I just ran it by myself.
So you're still running it.
I'm still running it. In fact, just today, we began the South Africa workshop.
And do you have not-for-profit status?
Yes,
So basically you raise money through donations.
we do. I
And you
have,
found people that are supportive. So
oh yeah.
you must have hooked up early on with people who were like really impressed by the mission.
Yes, so we do two. There's two kinds of fundraising. We do like email blasts, and we get small donations from $25 to let's say $1,000, and then I have a terrific board, some of whom donate significant amounts of money that give me 80% of my budget. We don't write any grants or anything because I'm the only. It's just me running it until I put together the teaching artist team, and then they go over to the country, and then I've got in South Africa 2 program directors who are South African artists who I hire, and they run the program there. And then throughout the year, after we do the 4-week summer program, which began today, so they're going to start writing a new play in both English and Xhosa that will perform for their community and Philippi Township just outside of Cape Town. And then we hire graduates of our program when the kids age out and they become apprentices. So we pay them to do that. And then we offer academic tutoring and theater workshops all year. So the kids can come once a week. And every day they get 2 hot meals, breakfast and lunch. We hire cooks and feed them.
So this takes money. So you're
It
raising
does.
significant money to do
Well,
this.
it's about $100,000 a year.
That's significant.
It's significant. Yeah. Yeah.
That's significant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. So do you how do you think this happened? Do you feel like you were divinely guided into this?
It was a total accident. And it was just because my friend Mariana went on this volunteer vacation. Right. And then when we got there, it was so much fun. And then, yeah, I think it just sort of happened. And when we did it twice, and finally we said, we need to become a nonprofit because people were giving us money, friends were contributing and helping, but they couldn't take a tax deduction from it. So we went to Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts in New York, and we did that whole process. And then, of course, all our artist friends were like, we want to go. And the deal was, you do this volunteer for us, you get free airfare, room and board, and 4 weeks in Tanzania or Rwanda or whatever on us. It's all expenses paid, but you don't get paid to do the work. And then afterwards, you're in Africa. Go on your safari, go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Like, we got you there. Now you can go on vacation afterwards. And everybody wanted to do that. Now we pay our teaching artists because our budget's a little bigger. So they get their expenses paid to fly over and they get paid.
This is very impressive. I mean, it's just stunning what you managed to do. It does feel like you were guided. It doesn't look like this was part of a plan that you sat down with.
It was not. No.
Wow. Just to the room, if you have any questions or comments or anything, please put them into the chat. And Owen, you're still here, right?
Yep, I'm here.
So if has anybody commented yet?
Yeah, we've
Because
got a question slash comment from Rob Hoffman. He says, when I saw your production of Between Riverside and Crazy at Park Square, I was really impressed by the diverse audience members who were in attendance. What did you do marketing outreach wise to bring in such diversity? Does Park Square slash you have a retention plan for this audience?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's nice to see you, Rob. It was great to see you at the show. Park Square has, like many theaters across the country, an older white audience, but a loyal one that's been coming for years and years and years. Some people say we've been coming for 39 years. Park Square turns 50 next year. We have a young marketing director who's 25, who's really in touch with social media posts and how to get to the young to get to younger audiences. One thing we did was we offered $15 tickets to high school and college students. The play itself, I think, got some good press, and so people could look at it and go, "Oh, this might be a play for me. It's got Latino characters and African American characters. It's written by an Egyptian American author." So I think the press about the play helped. But it's a struggle to get that very diverse audience in, and I hope this play lets people know in the Twin Cities, Park Square is headed in a new direction, that we're going to be doing newer and more contemporary work.
for context, I should have asked you this earlier. You Park Square's been around for almost it's like 50 years now. And
Yeah,
when did you just basically joined?
yeah, October 2023. It closed the year before and almost went bankrupt. It had to cancel the second half of its season under previous leadership. It just never rebounded from COVID, and it lost its longtime founding artistic director of 41 years, retired in 2018. They hired a new artistic director. He lasted a year. Then COVID hit. Then during COVID, the executive director, longtime executive director, took another job somewhere else. So the staff was leadership, had no leadership. Then they got a new executive director, merged with another small youth theater company called Stepping Stone Theater, which I don't understand still why they did that, but it turned out to be okay. Um, they came back from COVID, did the first half of the season, and then ran out of money, and 21 employees were let go, and they canceled 3 shows. I was scheduled to direct Between Riverside and Crazy as a guest director on that season. And that was my first connection with Park Square. I'd never worked there before. Um, and then the board called me during that summer when they were closed and said, "Would you consider helping us reopen?" So we had a year of no programming. I said, "I can't get you a 23-24 season. It's October 23." Like, then the board was like, "Can you get us a holiday show?" I'm like, "It's October." You want a show opening in December? It's October. No, but we'll get one next year. So then we opened our 24-25 season in September 24. So I've been there just a little over 18 months.
Do you is this some place you intend to stay with for a while?
I do. I think it's a very durable thing. I think when I got there, there was 1.5 employees, a bookkeeper who came in 2 days a week, and a tech director because they were doing rentals.
I had a
Right?
couple half employees too.
Yeah, right. And now I've got 8 full-time employees. We hired 250 plus artists, technicians, and craftspeople this year. They had $120,000 in the bank. We're now
So basically, if you don't mind my saying this, you're not. This is the another you. This is not the director. This is not the teaching artist.
No, this is the
This.
artistic director.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and that
tell us about the artistic director. How did you meet him?
yeah. So well,
I mean.
I was associate artistic director at MCC Theater for 14 years. So I watched Bobby Lupone and Bernie Telsey and learned a lot from them. Right. And that was great. I also worked at the Roundabout for 10 years. So I watched Todd Hames, right, one of the greatest artistic directors ever, and also Lynn Meadow. I was at Manhattan Theater Club for 5 years.
It's funny that all the people you mentioned have very different approaches and very different things that they do.
I know. Yes, and I was lucky. I got this very eclectic kind of mentorship just by watching their kind of leadership and what they did and the choices they made and how they made them.
Todd was probably a genius in terms of growing the budget and
Yeah,
it's just making the theater sustainable.
yeah.
Um, Bobby was a different breed.
Total. I mean, so, Todd was an MBA from Harvard, right? Not a theater guy. And he was first hired at the Roundabout in its old days when it was in an old supermarket in Chelsea. And he was hired as the business manager in,
Around the corner from where I now live, as a
okay,
matter of fact.
okay. So he was hired as their business manager when he was 25. And then I think when Gene Feist retired, the founder, they just made him executive artistic director. And he's like, I've never picked plays before, but boy, did he grow into that job and learn how to do it. Bobby was completely the opposite. No business sense at all. He was all intuition and impulse. But thankfully, he and Bernie and Will Cantler, as a trio of artistic directors, brought they were the yin and yang. They brought all of that to each other. Bobby was just impulsive. He had no filter. He was the most wonderful man I've ever known in my life. And interesting that both he and Todd have passed away, and we lost two really great, I think, theater leaders. And Lynn just retired.
Oh, did
Or
you?
they announced her retirement
Oh, I didn't. I missed that.
just yesterday. Yeah, after
That's
53 years, I think.
crazy. It's
I
amazing.
know.
So who's your favorite Stephen DiMenna? The teaching artist, the director, the artistic director?
Uh, I think the the teaching artist and the director are co-equals, and the artistic director is third.
Yeah, because that's not the kind of work that you
No, I like being in the rehearsal room or the
yeah.
classroom, but I am having fun. But yeah, I have to go to work from 9 to 5. Well, 10 to 5 every day.
As the artistic director of Park Center, Park Square, do you plan on directing most of the plays
No.
for their seasons? So how have you decided to do
Yeah.
this?
So last year, so Park Square used to do 8 or 9 shows a year before COVID. And one not so last year we could only do four. One of them has to be a mystery because that's their cash cow that they've been doing for 15 years. Okay. So that gives me 3 slots. In order to get a younger audience in, I created a family series during the holidays, so young couples with kids would have a reason to come to the theater. And that was our second best-selling show last year. And we usually find some young adult novel that's been adapted, et cetera. And it's a combination of adult professional actors, and if we need teenagers or kids, we cast them.
Bring in the outsiders.
Well, no younger. Like we're trying to get to the elementary, middle school kids.
Oh,
So,
okay.
we're doing Goosebumps, the musical next
There
year,
you go.
right? So, so that leaves me 2 slots for like plays, right? Um, so this year I made a very kind of comfort food season. So we started with the mystery, best-selling show of the year, Jeff Hatcher adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. Then we did this family series, and then we did an old American classic, The Gin Game, right? And I picked that for a wonderful local actress named Greta Oglesby to see what it would be like with an African American woman and a white man in that. Had a friend of mine, Faye Price, direct that. And then I put Between Riverside and Crazy, which would be the most cutting or edgy play at the end after building some trust over those first 3 shows with our audience.
Would you ever consider having an original piece like one original piece a year in your in your
I mean, like world premiere, like first production of a
well
brand new script.
new playwrights. I mean, right now there's no real opportunity for new playwrights at Park Center unless they have written a mystery, I guess.
Well, Jeff Hatcher's writing the next 5 mysteries, and
Yeah,
he's
so
not a new playwright, but
there you go.
he is popular. Yes, I do get scripts all the time, but uh, the challenge right now with Park Square's comeback from this closure is for the next 3 years. I have to make sure, well, because I'm not doing recognizable titles, I'm not doing Death of a Salesman, right? My audience didn't know Between Riverside and Crazy. They didn't know Stephen Geargis, so we had to educate them about it in order to make them come.
I was going to
So
ask you about that.
yeah, so I have to pick. I can't afford the time to work on a script that needs development. I need like established. Did it work? did Playwrights Horizons do it? Did it come from the public or MCC? Like, it's already been tested. I think I have to do that for a couple of years, right? Until we're
Right.
able to, until I know my audience is back.
Um, Eventually it would be lovely. I mean, for all of us writers, if you would have a developmental
Absolutely.
aspect
Yeah.
eventually. But you actually you're dealing with a theater that has to be rebuilt. I mean,
Yes.
basically, they were on the verge of closing, and you're coming in and helping them uh, bring back their audience.
Yes.
Do you find that you're bringing back an audience that existed, or are you creating new audience for them?
Both. I think both are happening. I would say 75% of this year was the audience that existed. Their longtime subscribers came back, and 25% were new first-time ticket buyers that we were doing some outreach to. And I think doing like an old American classic every once in a while, but doing it for a particular actor or actress. And then, next year is our 50th anniversary. So that's really a birthday cake season. There's nothing new in that. So, and three of the plays are all about the theater. Three of the shows. I'm like, it's our 50th. Let's celebrate
Which
this.
three? Which
So
three?
we're opening with Terrence McNally's "It's Only a Play."
Love it.
Yeah, right. Great show. Remember the great Broadway revival of
Hilarious.
in 2015 with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick.
Well, I saw the original, but yeah,
Oh, way back.
I'm
Yeah.
old.
Okay. So doing that, then for the family series Goosebumps called The Phantom of the Auditorium, and it's about a high school doing a musical called The Phantom, and the auditorium is haunted.
Wait a second. Did you have this written for you, or did you
No,
find this?
it's a book. So the Goosebumps is a young adult novel series of about
Oh, I
20
know.
some books,
R.L. Stein.
and one of
We know R.L. Stein.
this is one of those books. This is the theme of one of the books, and then a guy named John McClay, a playwright in Chicago, writes a lot of young adult musicals. He wrote the book to this, and then he had his partners wrote the music. So it's a published thing.
So you're not doing the first production. It's you.
No. It's an established thing. Yeah, we're licensing it from Scholastic Books.
Well, you're unique in finding a Goosebumps musical.
We searched because I said I've got to find a teenage show that's about the theater, and I didn't want to do High School Musical. So,
Thank you.
And then the centerpiece of the season is A Chorus Line.
Okay.
And it's the 50th anniversary. 2025 is the 50th anniversary of A Chorus Line, and 2025 is the 50th anniversary of Park Square. So those things align. Plus, it's the first Broadway musical I ever saw.
Are you going to bring Bjork Lee in to nurse you?
Funny you should say. So I called Bjork and I asked her to choreograph it, and she said I would love to. I was like, "What would it take to get you to come to Minneapolis, St. Paul, to choreograph A Chorus Line?" She says,
"Change the weather."
Well, it's in the spring, so that's
okay.
Good. I said, "I'm not sure I can afford you." She said, "No, it's not about that. I'm not available. But here, I'm going to give you my protege, Eddie Gutierrez." So Bjork has, she maintains the Michael Bennett choreography estate. And she has trained 5 people to be able to do Michael Bennett's choreography. And they have all been in either national tours or productions that she or Michael Bennett have directed.
And the only problem with all that is that you won't have Bjork, who is absolutely lovely.
Oh, she's so great. I know. I adore her. But she sent me Eddie Gutierrez, and he played Paul in several national tours. And he came out last week. We just had auditions last week, and he's doing all the original choreography. And the really interesting thing about everybody's like, why are you doing A Chorus Line? And I'm like, first of all, I think it's one of the best backstage musicals ever, right? And there are many good ones, Gypsy, Follies, etc. But I said, but it's the first Broadway show I ever saw when I was 17, and I worshipped Bobby Lupone. I wanted to be an actor like him, and I didn't know that 18 years later he'd give me my first job in New York. So there's a very personal connection for me to that.
Got it. Well, that's some amazing stuff. I'm still sorry that you don't have Bjork coming, because I
know, but she's quite busy with the 50th anniversary events.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
Oh my God! So your 50th your 50th anniversary coincides with the
Right.
chorus lines.
Those things align,
Oh,
right?
your publicist must be in love with you.
He's like loves it, loves it. Now my production crew are like, it's 27 people. We don't have that many mics. I'm like, then we'll rent them. So they're freaking out. And they're like, why are we doing this? And I'm like, because the 50th of Chorus Line and the 50th of Park Square, that nexus will never happen again. We have to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just looking. Owen, any other questions in the room?
Yeah,
There
we had a
was,
question from Ned Ginsburg.
I
I
see
think it's
that.
probably
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
answered at this point, but does any of your work with the International Theater Project involve music, as in musical theater writing, or
Yeah.
are the plays that are written strictly spoken word?
No, they do involve music, but not in a traditional musical theater way. The kids create, uh, South African teenagers are amazingly adept at singing and dancing without any training at all. And they create songs a cappella or sometimes with marimbas that accompany the show that will move them along. And they make them up themselves with no music director and no composer. And it's like Ladysmith Black Mambazo perfect harmonies. So there is a musical component, but it's not like we're writing a musical or a musical theater thing. I'm like, hey, let's have a song here as the audience comes in that welcomes them. And then the kids put their heads together and they just start harmonizing and making stuff up. And then they sort of set it after a while. And it's quite beautiful. There, I put our website in the chat so you could see some work that the kids do there.
That's amazing. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell everybody in the room, remind you all to put your emails into the chat so that we know that you're here. That's how we take attendance. Any other questions from the room? Oh, no,
Not in the chat, nope.
not in the chat. So I don't know whether I can fully get the picture of what you were doing with the International Theater Project. I think I could have given a little bit more time to that. You, the story is that you have, okay, your friend was the one who told you about this possibility, or that you sort of birthed it together.
Yes,
I'm
right.
still trying to
Yeah.
put it all together in my head. And you, the first year you obviously didn't raise 100. I don't think you
No,
raised
the first year
100,000.
it was like we just needed airfare, and she got housing through the volunteer organization that she was in. I think the first year cost us $5,000, right? And just friends gave us some money, you know.
No, now some people would think that going from a $5,000 budget to $100,000 in a year is imprudent.
Oh, it didn't go in a year though, Bob. That took a good 10 or 12 years.
Oh, okay.
Like the next year, we were like 15,000 because we brought 4 more people with us. And that's when we realized we needed to be nonprofit, that we were starting to ask people for money. And we hovered at around 25,000 for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is so, I know that frustration. We hovered, I think when we first started back in 19, what was it, 93 or something like that, we were hovering, and most not-for-profits were hovering at about 50,000. Nobody could seem to get over that hump.
Right.
And we eventually got a little bit more than that, but we're not doing much more than you are in terms of our annual budget.
Yeah.
We're still a relatively small company. Any questions from the room? Anybody want to know anything more? So okay, what is the structure of your not-for-profit for the International Theater Project? It's like a company of one, did you say? Was that the
Well,
one?
I'm the only full-time employee, and it's not really full-time. I'm not paid. I'm paid sort of like a part-time salary because and for years, my colleague Marianne and I, we didn't take a salary for 15 years. It was just our passion project, right? Because we had our lives and our jobs.
I've done that.
Yeah, right. And it's it's one event, and it's just the summer. There's a lot of preparation beforehand, but we go for that 3 weeks or 1 month in the summer, and it's beautiful. I got to travel to these beautiful places.
But you were spending money. You were not making money.
Mm-hmm. No, we were spending money, not making money. It changed when in 2017, I was doing this program at Manhattan Theater Club called the Stargate Company, which was a company within Manhattan Theater Club. And we worked with court-involved young men who were just out of Rikers Island, teenagers.
There you go. There's another Stephen DiMenna.
Yeah, so my friend Judy Tate, who's a playwright, and she was associated with Manhattan Theater Club, was hired by them to be a playwright to help these boys write a play about their lives, and that would perform on Manhattan Theater Club's off-Broadway stage at City Center. And they got a grant to do this, and it was so. Judy came to South Africa with me the year before, and she said, "You'd be great to work with me on this because you know how to put up a show in 4 weeks with teenagers." So we did that for 5 years. And one of the board members of Manhattan Theater Club contributed specifically to Manhattan Theater Club for this program. And the best thing I did was I asked her to be on my board also. And that was the first time we had a board member who had the ability to give in a large way.
Oh yes.
And
I went through boards, many boards, many years before I started having a give get.
Yeah. So having her, it like my board was really a service board. We had a lawyer who helped us and did pro bono, but my board wasn't a wealth board. We didn't have a minimum that you had to give, right? Some board members give, some board members don't. But it was, they were giving about $2,500 a year. Then I got this one board member who was able to like give a big chunk of money. And then she said, "Oh, here's another person I think you should have on the board who was also wealthy." And finally, I got 4 members of my board who had the ability to write, 5-figure checks.
That's nice.
And
If you want to lend one out,
Yeah.
I'm available.
Yeah.
Let's see. Stephanie Schwartz made a comment. No. Okay. I had thought of something I wanted to ask you when you were talking about this. Oh yeah, I want to explore a little bit more the teaching artist aspect of you. I mean, was it the same job at City Center's Encores as it was at Theater for a New Audience, as it was at Roundabout? Was
a little different. So Encores was all about the musicals, right? Their model, which was great, and I worked at Encores from 95 through 2018. And so they would have their season of 3 musicals. And we would go out, a team of us, a choreographer, a music director, and myself, and they would have partner schools. And we'd go out to a school like 4 times, and we would stage and choreograph a scene and a song from the musical they were going to come and see. And then the day of the invited dress.
What a clever idea.
Yeah, this was City Center had a marvelous, still does, marvelous education program. So the first season I did, it was Du Barry Was a Lady, One Touch of Venus, and Chicago.
All right.
Right, that season. So we would go out, and each school got assigned a song from the show. If they were coming to see Du Barry Was a Lady, they got a song from that and a scene. We would go in and we would stage it with the kids, usually with a music teacher or a drama teacher. Then all 5 schools came to City Center in the afternoon. They performed all their scenes and songs, took a dinner break, and then they went to the invited dress of the show.
That's very
Great
nice.
program.
Yeah.
Great
Wow.
program. Yeah, so that City Center still does that. So that was great. Theater for New Audience was all about going out and the kids would write plays. Each kid would write a 10-minute play. It was a year-long. It would be a year-long residency, and you'd go and visit a couple of classes at a school and teach the kids playwriting, and then they would, over the course of the year, work on writing a 10-minute play, and then Theater for a New Audience would bring adult actors to the school and do a reading at the end of the year of the kids' plays.
Well, that's kind of what I was suspecting. When we say theater teaching artist, we don't really know what that is until we know what the program is.
It's actually a term that New York kind of coined, right? And it's theaters decided in the early 90s, there was a thing that the Giuliani administration created called Project Arts, which would give public schools more money for the arts. And this was in the early 90s to the late 90s. So every school got like $68 per student for the arts. So if you had 3,000 students in your high school, you got all that money. And you had to use it to bring in professional artists or companies like Theater for a New Audience, or the Roundabout or Lincoln Center, whatever. So all these nonprofits wanted to start education departments. So City Center began theirs in 95. Roundabout began theirs in 96. Everybody wanted a piece of that money. So, but nobody said, well, we don't have anybody who knows how to teach. We just have actors and directors and playwrights. So they just sent us all out as artists who teach. And we're like, well, what do we call ourselves? Artists in residence. You know, we're not like official teachers. So the term teaching artist somehow popped up, right? That we were artists who would go out and teach. And then just over the course of doing it over the years, we all learned how to do it better and how to schlep out to a school somewhere in the 5 boroughs and, you know, teach a playwriting class or a musical theater class or teach them about a play they were going to come and see.
This is this is an interesting tie into my next community gathering. We're going to be off for 4th of July, everybody. But on July 11th, I have Peter Avery coming, who's
Oh, well, there you go.
the theater director for the New York City Department of Education, and he's going to talk a lot about the programs that he brings
Yeah.
into the classes. So have you ever crossed paths with Peter?
Peter and I worked together for 15 years. So we were both teaching. So he was.
So wasn't I clever to have you come on today?
Peter and I go way
next
back. So he was. I first met him MCC in that old space on 28th Street. Across the hall was Tada, that youth theater, and Peter was the director of education there.
And Ned Ginsburg, who's in our room, has written shows for Tada.
Oh, okay.
He's had shows done there.
There we go. So Peter was there. Then Peter went to Disney and was their first director of education for Disney theatricals. And the Department of Education back in, I want to say 2004 or 5, decided they wanted to give more money to theater in the schools, but there was no curriculum. There was no citywide theater curriculum. And so they hired a citywide theater director, a guy named Paul King. And he put a committee together of teaching artists to help them write a curriculum. And Peter and I were on that committee, along with people from Roundabout, Manhattan Theater Club, et cetera, et cetera. And then I co-wrote what's now called the New York City Department of Education K through 12 Theater Blueprint, which is a K through 12 blueprint of sequential theater things that still exists and is used. And Peter and I met. Then he took over Paul's job when Paul moved up, and he became the director. And Peter would hire me and other theater people to go do workshops for New York City public school teachers. And then he asked me.
This is mind-boggling to me. I mean, I couldn't have better prep for my next
guest
than this.
Peter's going to be a fascinating person to have because he is responsible for theater programs for 1.5 million New York City students.
He's also the only person in the country that has the title of director of theater for an education program
for a city. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Peter, and they also offer in this thing called Summer Arts Institute every summer at the Frank Sinatra School of the Arts in Queens, which is a high school that Tony Bennett founded and funded.
How do I not know these things?
Right, it's a public school. It's like you all know LaGuardia High School, right?
Yeah.
Right. So Sinatra's another one. It's like the second LaGuardia, but it's in Queens. Tony Bennett founded it, named it after his best friend Frank Sinatra, and they have a beautiful music, dance, art, film, and theater program. So in the summer, there's a thing called Summer Arts Institute that the Tony Bennett Foundation and others fund, where about 400 kids from various art areas go to studios there every day for 4 weeks. They get credit for it. And I ran along, so it's always a full-time public school certified teacher, because you have to have that person in the room, and then a professional artist. They partner and they run each studio. So I worked with a public school theater teacher, and we were the person. We ran their Summer Arts Institute theater for 7 years. They still do this every summer. And like the instrumental program is run by Midori and Company. American Ballet Theater partners with the dance program. Like Peter puts together these partnerships, bringing professionals into the schools. So you're going to love him. And
Remember,
tell him I said hi.
I will. Remember earlier, oh, by the way, Teresa Eyring says hi to you.
Oh my gosh. So
Just
she,
talking, just talking to
she's
her
an
earlier.
old friend. Yeah.
Yeah. So remember earlier, I asked whether it was divine guidance that sort of brought the pieces together that created the International Theater Project for you.
Mhm.
I wasn't being flippant. I actually believe in divine guidance.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I learned all this about Peter Avery like 2 weeks before I'm interviewing him is
Yeah.
like a miracle to me. I should probably have you both on, but I think Peter likes to be on by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he'll be great. And Peter's great. And what he's done, gosh, he's been there over 10 years. He gives he gets producers.
Oh no, he's told me a lot of what he does.
Yeah, and has he told you about the Schubert high school festival, high school theater festival with the Schuberts?
Is that like the Jimmy Awards, but his version of the
Well,
Jimmy Awards?
similar. It's not a competition, but he got is it Bernie? No, Freddie Gersten, right? Who owns MTI, right?
Okay.
Right. And Freddie created all the Broadway junior musicals like 15 years ago. He had this idea like, let's adapt all these big musicals to be 55 minutes long so middle schools could do them. So right. So Peter got the Schubert Foundation and Freddie to give money to middle schools all around the 5 boroughs that are in some of the poorest neighborhoods who don't have drama teachers or music teachers. They would get a grant. Peter would then get Arts Connection, a nonprofit in the city, to send a music director, a choreographer, and a director to a school to direct a Broadway junior musical from MTI and train 3 teachers from the school how to do it over 3 years. And the school got like $15,000 to produce their musical, which for middle school is a big budget. And then after 3 years, if they keep doing MTI musicals, they get them royalty free at the school for life. Then at the end of the year, each school brings one song to a Schubert theater on a Monday, and they perform their number on a Broadway stage.
So I'm going to stop you because Peter's going to say all this in 2
I know.
weeks.
So, and then they do the same thing for high schools. Yeah. So Peter will tell you all about it. But he does amazing work.
I have one last question for you. You've been an artistic director, you've been a teaching artist, you've been a director, you've been so many different things. What do you see as your goal? What do you want to do that you haven't done yet?
Well, it's interesting. Now that Park Square has come into my life, I want to, over the next 10 years, leave a legacy for that theater. So I'm glad I'm there at the beginning of its next 50 years. So there's a big capital campaign for that. But I would like my international theater project to expand to some other countries. Right. And to be able to be sustainable without me when I retire. And to be able to pass that on to somebody else. I would love to see us in 3 or 4 other countries. And I would love to bring the kids, after they create their play, to New York City to perform the plays that they've written at Manhattan Theater Club or MCC or somewhere. That's my dream.
That would be amazing. That would
Yeah.
definitely be amazing. It seems that there's you might look at a franchise model because different people may have different passions about different countries.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find the right people who have the same vision that you have, so you can say, look at what I'm doing in Africa. Why don't you do this in Asia?
Right. Right, in Asia or in Central and South America. Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's my dream, is to kind of be like, we have a program in, let's say we have a program in Cambodia. We have a program in India. We have a program, and we go to communities where there's high poverty. That's the whole point. And, kids can't work their way out of poverty unless they have confidence in themselves and can dream about and take action, to move their lives forward.
You've had an impact in very different areas of the world. And I admire you very much. I
Well,
think
thank you so much. Thank you, Bob.
I want to thank Rob Hoffman for suggesting that I bring you
Yeah, thanks
on.
for connecting us. Thanks, Bob.
I'm going to do a little bit of a wind up for YouTube, and I'll be back in a moment. I just want to thank again. I want to thank Stephen DiMenna for being a guest, a very very inspiring guest today. I think we have some similar genes, you and I, in terms of service and in terms of our split focus on the arts and on service. That's basically how I sort of understand myself as well. Um, and I want to also thank all the people that come every week and join us in the room, the community that have been coming for 266 weeks. Um, it's amazing to me that people are still tuning in and listening to the interviews that I do. Thank you, and I want to thank whoever found us by accident, whoever's out there in YouTube who's looking at us. If you got this far, I actually know that YouTube views doesn't necessarily mean you've watched the entire thing. But if you got this far, I want to thank you for sticking with us. If you find it interesting and if you want to actually be part of the room and actually ask questions, you can. Well, I can make that happen. Basically, it's easy. Just email me. I'm Bob Ost, and I'm at trunltd@aol.com. trunltd@aol.com. Just say that you want to be part of the Zoom meetings, and I'll send you a Zoom link every week. And we've been doing this as a community service for a long time, having now very clearly come out of shutdown, like for a couple of years now. One thing that's happened that's interesting in theater that you may or may not be aware of, and this is not an exaggeration or a random figure. Costs have doubled what they were prior to COVID, prior to shutdown, literally doubled. In some cases, more than doubled. But I'll take doubled as a way for you to understand the fact that we actually do need support. We do need some financial support from people. I will never stop people from coming for free. This is a service. I'm a very service-minded person, and I want you here, and I want you to be able to come, even if you can't afford it. But if you can afford $12, pay $12. If you want to give a donation to us, give a donation. You can go to TRU Donate, trudonate.com, trudonate.com. We'd be grateful for whatever you can give us, and have lots of things happen. I think you all already know who I'm having in 2 weeks. It's Peter Avery, and he's going to be talking about the education in the arts. I then am having an interesting conversation about theater awards. I wanted to do it before the Tonys, but I couldn't get people together. But I got an interesting lineup of people that are going to talk about theater awards, what they mean and why we give them. And I have people coming from Off-Broadway Alliance, the Drama League, the IT Awards, and the Drama Desk Awards. So that'll be an interesting conversation. And this is for everybody to know that we do programs besides the community gathering. We have a producer development program. And on July 25th, I will have the people that run that program, Jane Dubin and Blair Russell, who are going to tell you about the program. Anybody who's interested in learning about the business of theater, anybody that's interested in being a producer, anybody who's interested in just being of use to producers. Producers actually like to work with people who understand the business. So we're going to talk about our program and see if you're interested in joining our program. That's it. I think I've said more than enough. So hopefully I'll see you in 2 weeks, and have a nice 4th of July next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.